There's not just one purpose to humor. There's three. And the thing is that most people think that humor is about entertaining and it's getting the other person to laugh. You can have humor without laughter. You can have laughter without humor. But another purpose is influence. And a third purpose is well-being. And with influence, we can use humor to help people persuade or motivate or inspire or educate, negotiate. There's so many things that you can do.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Best You interview series. It's Gary here again. Thank you as always for taking the time to join me. And today I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by speaker, author, neuro-humorist, transformationalist, founder of The Human Lab, and one of only 65 women in the Worldwide Speaker Hall of Fame, Karyn Buxman, who is here to discuss the importance of humour in life and in business. Karyn works with high-achieving professionals who appear successful on the outside but quietly feel exhausted, disconnected, or unfulfilled on the inside. You know, the ones who have checked all the boxes, yet something still feels off. Through the lens of neuroscience, psychology, and axiology, Karyn helps people uncover the unconscious habits of thinking that fuel burnout, comparison, and self-doubt, rewire those patterns into clarity, confidence, and calm, and rediscover genuine joy, the kind that's been essentially hiding in plain sight. Karyn's health, hope, and humour framework integrates brain science, positive psychology, and practical mindset tools to help people reconnect with purpose, resilience, and authentic happiness. But the key here is that humour isn't the goal. It's one of the many ways that we spark awareness, healing, and human connection. Karyn helps her clients through one-on-one coaching, leadership programs, and keynotes. And here is how I met Karyn. I attended ICF Converge in October 2025, and there was a session called Coach with Levity, the serious business of humour in coaching as a transformational coaching tool. Quite the mouthful of a session, but as soon as I seen humour in there, it was something I was very interested in. Humour is something that I have been known for in terms of my life and my career, and something that I really lean on in times of actually in any time in my life. I was going to say in times of stress or strife or trouble, but that's not exactly true. It's just something that's a core part of my being. So I was really interested to try and see what the academics say about bringing this into actual life and how it can help, certainly from a coaching perspective. And I have to say, it was literally the last session before the keynote on the final day, and the session was absolutely packed. It was the busiest session I had went to over the 3 days, and the vibe, the energy, the interaction, the camaraderie, it was absolutely superb. I had to end up standing at the back of the room. Actually, I did that most times anyway, because I just like to kind of see the room from the back. But I had no choice that day because it was literal standing room only. And it was brilliant to see and know and understand that humour does play an important part in the human psychology and in our ability to be able to be aware, to grow, and to have more positive experiences. So I reached out to Karyn and we managed to connect. She was so kind and gracious to come on the show. Karyn, thank you very, very much for joining me today.
Well, wherever two or three are gathered or more in the name of humor, I want to be there. So I'm excited to be here with you today, Gary.
Me too. So let's start with your journey, and specifically the part of your journey that led to humour playing a very significant part in what it is you will do with and for clients to be able to get them an opportunity to experience all the benefits of using it.
You know, I started out as an instructor, as a professor at a small university, a school of nursing. Was going back for my master's. This was way back before many of your listeners were even born. I was just a little child. However, I went back for my master's, and we had to take on a research project and a thesis. And I just stumbled across the fact that another researcher that I came across had studied humor, and it was like, you can do that.
Yeah.
So, I went to my instructors, who, of course, said, "Nice try, not professional enough, not serious enough, too vague, blah blah blah." But when you know, and it was like, oh, I
Yeah.
really want to do this. And lo and behold, once I got in, it was just mind blowing. I'm thinking, why isn't everybody talking about this? And so from there, people started asking me to share my findings. And I remember the first time, Gary, I was ready to give this talk about the p-value of less than 0.05 and blah blah blah. And I discovered people thought I was funny. It's like, oh, who knew? So from there, it started to snowball. And within a year, I was having to make a choice between teaching and speaking. And I thought, well, I'll give it a try for a year. If it doesn't work, I can always go back. And you blink and it's 35 years later.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I'm realizing now is that it was the idea of something light-hearted, fun that drew me into this topic. It was like, who wouldn't want to spend time researching something that's going to be a little bit fun instead of the something so heavy. But it was the power of humor that's kept me in for over 35 years. And I think that's the same way with a lot of folks that I have talked about since ICF Converge was, you know, we were so pleasantly surprised. We knew we had the last slot on the last day. People are tired. And what if nobody shows up? What if you build it and nobody comes?
Yeah.
And it was standing room only. And from the conversations that I've had with people like you and others who were there, I think it was the idea of something light hearted, fun, intriguing. But then when you see the power that humor can have, it's like, well, who wouldn't want some of that, right?
Yeah, definitely, and I love the academic connection from the very beginning. I teach at a couple of local universities here in Calgary, and the original inspiration for I was an academic for a period of time back home in Scotland, and I tried to get into it when I got here, but I was busy establishing my life, and then eventually got a job and went and did some project management classes. And the very first class that I did, there was this comedian essentially in the class, and he had this big bag of fairy wands and lightsabers and things like that, and it was just very, very fun. And I thought, that's the sort of stuff that I would really like to model myself on. And then there was the subsequent 5 classes as part of this 6 class program. It was as dry can be. And I'm a former painter, house painter, and it was literally like watching paint dry, where I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, I don't think I can do this for 2 days. He's just reading it out. He's not adding any value. There's no color to the conversations, no stories. So then I applied to go and teach this stuff. And I modeled it on this guy, and a shout out to a guy called Larry Fox. And we kept in touch very loosely over the years. But that was the key, because I was super engaged. Everyone was super engaged. Now, I know and understand it's not for everyone. And I got feedback one day saying, if I wanted a comedy show, I would have gone to Yuck Yucks, in the class. And I don't know if it was intended as as an insult, but I was flattered. I was like, oh, that's very kind of you to say that. And I know and understand. But my guarantee for people, Karyn, was we will absolutely cover this curriculum in the time that we have said we're going to cover this curriculum, but we're going to go on a journey, and we're going to have some laughs, and we're going to have some stories to share and tell and such. So it's going to be a different experience. If you don't like laughing, this might be a long couple of days for you, my friend.
Oh, that's
And
good.
some people just weren't into it. Have you had those experiences over time where they're kind of like, you need to tone that down?
I have had experiences where, a company will bring me in and there's the person sitting on the front row with arms crossed, just
Yeah.
really resistant. And, for an early part of my career, I used to spend so much energy trying to win those people over.
Yeah.
And instead now it's like, let's take on the people who get it, who want it. I don't really care about the others. Sometimes they'll come along because they start looking and seeing, well, everybody else is really enjoying this. And oh, by the way, we are learning something in addition to this.
Yeah.
But I think particularly some leaders and some managers and some coaches, this came about when Sue Stevenson and I started polling coaches and saying, do you use humor? And if not, what's holding you back?
Mhm.
And one of the things that came up was, people won't take me seriously. Another one was, well, what if I offend someone? And then the third one was, well, what if I'm not funny? Which, by the way, if somebody says that, my answer is great, because you don't have to be funny to leverage humor into influence and well-being and leadership and all, coaching and all of these things. They kind of misconstrue what the purpose of humor is. And that's been part of my academic journey, is because for so long I'm thinking, why do I feel like Sisyphus trying to push a rock up the hill? Because people are like, oh, I mean, even my cab drivers, they know, "Oh, did you know humor's good for you?" And it's like, really, tell me more. They
Yeah.
know this stuff. However, they're reluctant. And part of what I recognized was that there's not just one purpose to humor. There's three. And the thing is that most people think that humor is about entertaining and it's getting the other person to laugh.
Mhm.
And, Gary, people are signing up for your class because they know that they love to laugh, and that's great. And there's more ways to use humor than just that. You can have humor without laughter, you can have laughter without humor, but another purpose is influence, and a third purpose is well-being. And with influence, we can use humor to help people persuade or motivate or inspire or educate, and negotiate. There's so many things that you can do, but the payoff isn't getting somebody to laugh. We don't measure our success by LPMs, laughs per minute, which is, a good comic. The higher their LPMs, the more successful they are.
Yeah.
But for us, we don't care about that. We are looking at, did we achieve our goal? Have we created relationships? And what's the quality of those relationships? And then with well-being, very similarly, it's not about how often did we get the other person to laugh, whether it's physiological, psychological, social, emotional, spiritual. In terms of their health spectrum, have we been able to move them up, or in some cases help them hold their own
Mhm.
and improve the quality of their life, and sometimes quantity, but definitely the quality. And I think that is so much richer when people recognize that, oh, it's entertainment, yay, but it's also so powerful in terms of influence or well-being. I mean, does that make sense to you?
Oh, 100% it does. I actually, on my social media handles, I have the work that I do is edutainment. That's what I call
Yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah,
And it's just it's a play on words. A pal of mine had said that statement many, many years ago, and I just hung on to it thinking that's actually what I do. And
yeah.
it's an ability to be able to deliver the material in such a way that it will be absorbed, it will be enjoyed in the moment, and hopefully reflective enough afterwards, where the joke or the punchline or the humor in the story is the learning in and of itself, and it's easier to recollect after the fact. And one of the things, so just to go back to what you said earlier about someone says I'm not funny, and then you said humor is not about being funny.
Right.
To the lay person out there, how best would you describe that so that they would understand that you can still be humorous without being funny?
I love this conversation. Um, Again, when we think of using it for leadership or coaching or whatever, it's twofold. It's for ourselves and it's for those whom we're serving. Uh, let me hop here to a little story. I'm not linear, so you hang on here. You're also part of my memory here. We're going to come back to this, but my youngest son studied with Second City for several years, and he's a starving artist in Chicago. I go up to visit him. His cabinets consist of a loaf of bread, and in the refrigerator, a bottle of salad dressing. I said, "What are you eating?" He said, "Ranch dressing sandwiches." So as I'm feeding him and he's scarfing food up, and I'm realizing, maybe this isn't going to be very lucrative. I said, "Is this going to serve you in other areas of your life?" And he said, "Oh, Mom, it already is. It already is." He said, as a waiter and a bartender, that's how he was kind of supporting himself. He said, "I already get great tips, better than the other waiters because I'm funny." But when I started looking at each table as a troop, and I realized somebody at that table thought they were funny too. Mom, when I am funny, I get great tips. But when I can make that person look funnier than me, I get amazing tips.
Wow.
So part of this in leadership and coaching, see, I did come back,
Right.
is that you don't have to be the funny person.
Yeah.
By setting up your audience to, asking questions that will let them answer with a funny response. You were talking about stories,
Yeah.
which I love that, because stories, we connect with stories in our brains. The same part of our brain as the storyteller that lights up is the same part of the brain that lights up with the person hearing the story. So we're connecting. And with a funny story, now we've got dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, endorphins. I mean, we're just like at this chemical bath that our brains are just so happy.
Yeah.
And so while we're doing this, we're getting them to open up. When they're listening, they're learning, they're retaining. And so we can use humorous props. We can use humorous stories that don't have to be our own, or you can ask somebody in your audience or room, or even one-on-one conversation in the grocery store line, tell me about the funniest person in your family, or what's the most embarrassing moment you can laugh about now? Or, I mean, I have a list of about 100 questions that we'll ask that will evoke somewhat of a humorous response. They get laughter from the people who are the audience, whether that's classmates or teammates or whatever. You know, they look like a winner. And because you were the catalyst for this, you were the one that prompted the question, prompted the laughter, you get seen as having a sense of humor, which, by the way, whether you're looking for a leader or looking for a lover, those are one of the top 3 traits that people are looking for in that person. And so you come across as a very, very um, effective and enjoyable and likable leader, which likable is when you look at influence, what's the persuasion. I've just lost his name, but the pillars of influence and the pillars of persuasion. This is likability is one of those.
Yeah.
That being said, let me give you another example. I teach an 8-week course called The Missing Piece, and it's strategic humor for coaches, leaders, and people who listen for a living. And I have people from all around the world. And we just wrapped up the last 8-week session. And one of the uh, people in the master class was a coach, a woman from the Netherlands. And she was saying, she goes, I have somebody I coach. And she goes, I don't look forward to it. I don't really like this guy.
Mhm.
How do you expect me to make him to laugh? And I said, well, let's take a step back here. Is this about making him laugh? And she said, no. And I said, what if you, as a prep for yourself, before you come into this conversation, you experience some humor that you enjoy, whether that's an audio, a video, phone a friend, whatever. Because if you do that, that will lower your resistance. It will lighten your mood. It's going to open up some of the cognitive capacity. We have studies now, and this is why I love the axiology in the brain, is that we know with all the noise in people's heads, and I don't think there's ever been a noisier time in our lives. This is actually squeezing out empathy and compassion. And how can you be a good leader? How can you be a good coach without those traits. And humor, even if it's just for a moment, gives us that brain break that lets us reconnect with our cognitive capacity, with our problem solving, with our compassion, with our empathy. And again, who wouldn't want a piece of that? That
Yeah.
was a long answer.
Oh, I love it. I really do love it. There's so much benefit to be gained there, and to the person in your class. I think one of the key things is that from a coaching perspective, one of the misunderstood parts of coaching is that it can be difficult, it can be heavy, because these people are looking for some sort of shift in their life, whether it be monumental or incremental, to say, I have to stop being or doing this, and I want to be able to start being or doing that. And they're going on a very heavy, at times, journey, which then sometimes doesn't manifest itself into them being the best version of themselves in and
Yeah.
of that moment. And it's very difficult as a coach not to take that on board, because you're looking to try and create impact and serve as much as you possibly can. And I love the idea of humor being one of multiple tools that a coach would have access to in and of a moment, and not to start every session by saying, did you hear the one about, and then trying to rhyme off a
Right.
joke, but
Right.
to say, if and when the opportunity might present itself, there might be that perspective to be able to input some levity there, to say, didn't expect that. And then what you're doing is you're creating connection. And
Yes.
maybe where connection wasn't present before, and that breaks down some of the barriers that you maybe already broken down prior to the session, like you said. But then you have that opportunity in the moment. I didn't, you think that's funny. I think that's hilarious. I didn't realize that we have the same sort of sense of humor. Connection, connection,
Connection.
connection through that. It's so profound. There's so much information there. You must see that in your classes all the time.
All the time, all the time. And we always start the classes, and I start my coaching sessions, pretty much any session that I'm involved in, with, in neuro leadership coaching, we're calling this a brain toward position. You want both brains leaning in toward one another, than, one leaning in and the other leaning away, or both leaning away. And humor can be a great way to start this. When you were talking about that, you reminded me of another person I worked with, and he said, I have over 20,000 hours of coaching. He said, quite frankly, I need I want this for myself, so that I don't get bored with the coaching
Yeah,
piece. And he goes, my goal is to get my client to laugh within the first 60 seconds. So, I don't think that has to be even a laugh out loud. Again, we can have humor without laughter, laughter without humor, or the sweet spot where you have both.
yeah,
But to, one of my coaches, because I think every coach should have a coach,
yeah.
he always, when we hop on, he's like funny face and just like, rock, how you doing? Or another person, they started this, and I've continued it when they said, oh, it's Karyn Day. So it's like, when I got on with you, it's like, it's Gary Day. It's
Yeah.
Gary Day. It's Gary. I mean, they chuckle a little bit, and we move on. But now we're both in a brain toward position.
Yeah, it's so important, and persevering with things like that gives you that opportunity to say, it might not land on day one, but there's a purpose behind this. It's not just to use a bit of time and create some sort of funky experience for someone. There's an intent behind it, and I think that's the thing that's sometimes lost on people, where if there's such a thing as too much levity in and
Yeah.
of a situation, say for example in the workplace, or at home as well, that you're not taking it seriously enough, you're not being as productive as you should be, you're not actually doing what you're paid to do. There's nowhere in your job description does it say make everyone laugh. And I had a situation where, and as a transient project manager over the decades, sometimes you would be taking over a project, sometimes you'd be leaving a project early to go to another project, or leaving the organization before the project's finished, or whatever it looks like. And there's times when people have come behind me, and they've they're my successor essentially, and I would say, listen, this is how I do it. not everyone's style, but this is what you want to do. And some of them have flat out said, that's I'm not going to do that. We're not going to have that levity moment or anything. We're just going to get the work done and such like that. And over time, keeping in touch with either them or colleagues that would be working on the project, the same amount of work got done, Karyn.
Yeah.
So then what you're talking about is the experience of the people, and most likely back to that connection as well, where my personal preference is I would like levity. I would like the ability to laugh and have the opportunity to poke fun at people and pro-social teasing, I believe it's called in psychology terms, and have them do the exact same to me and have that camaraderie, because that breaks down a whole bunch of communication barriers.
Yeah.
Too, when you're then having conversations that previously might have been daunting and difficult, they could still be a difficult conversation, but almost insurmountable, to the point of saying, I have no idea how I would even approach that person to have that conversation. Well, you know what? We were just bantering 15 minutes ago. I'm going to go and say, hey, listen, I'd love to keep talking about that. I need to talk about something a bit more serious. Do you have 5 minutes? And that's a door opened, without being the original intent of that. But I think there's that lack of understanding. I'd love your perspective on that there's a lack of understanding or appreciation for the productivity will be the same or possibly more. It's certainly not going to be less. And then it becomes an experience. And then the experience, people are growing from experiences. They're not shrinking from experiences.
Yeah. Yeah. And it is. It's one of those things where people are afraid that everything's going to get away from them. There's going to be too much. And I like to think of humor in these cases more like a seasoning rather than the main meal, because we've all met those people who are on all the time, and that is more of a deflection. Another thing that you were making me think of is just how much of this is about listening skills. And not being the one who's just talking all the time or entertaining all the time. Because people say, well, how do I know what to use humor about with them? And it's the same listening skills. It's the deep listening that we need to do, because people are giving us cues all the time.
Yeah.
What I'm finding, particularly with these axiological assessments that we do, is that even in the coaches or leaders' head, there's so much noise that even though they want to pay attention, even though they think they're paying attention, there's not enough cognitive capacity here.
Yeah.
And they are missing cues right and left. People are giving you cues constantly about things that you could be remarking on. So it's there. People say, well, you've got it easy. Things are funny for you. There's nothing funny happening in my life. The difference between us from a brain perspective is I've wired my brain. I've told my brain, I want to see more of that. And it took time, but over time now I can't go out. There's not a single day where there isn't going to be something that I stumble upon that's humorous. May not be laugh out loud. And there are times where humor isn't appropriate. I'm not saying it's the be all end all.
Yeah.
Again, you have to use your intuition as to when is this going to be appropriate, but you're also leaving lots of opportunities on the table when you're not wiring your brain to take advantage of all of this, because there are so many benefits.
Yeah, there really are. And even in the odd occasion, if you were to get it wrong, it did become a sensitive issue or something that just they didn't attach at all to anything humorous because of where they're at in and of the moment. There's an ability to gracefully exit that situation with a bit of humor as well at the same time, to acknowledge the error, the faux pas, the perceived or unintended insensitivity with that. And then, so in times for me, I've been kind of like, wow, didn't expect that. That fell flat. I'm going to get better. I do apologize. And there's a collective respectful acknowledgement to say, I thought it was the right time. Didn't mean to hurt anyone's feelings. But I do that in a humorous way to say, it's who I am. And I'm not saying, haha, you got fired, or haha, you didn't meet that project deadline. That there's just something that you thought might have been a thing at the time. But again, it's the cognitive capacity. Maybe I wasn't really listening. Maybe I wasn't really looking at the cues. So from my own personal perspective, Karyn, then I'm taking that away and saying, how did I misread that? How could I get better? Is there some makeup that I have to do? Is there a personal apology that's required for that particular person? And the ability to be able to, to use that as a growth mechanism at the same time. Do you work with people who have just got it catastrophically wrong from a humour perspective and they're trying to rein it back in?
Yes. I mean, sometimes you really just put your foot in your mouth.
Yeah.
And when that happens, you have to take your foot out. And then, like you said, you apologize. It was not my intention to offend. And this is one of the reasons why over the decades in my career, I started creating competencies, because much of this could be avoided
Yeah.
if people understand. And the competencies are in a white paper that Sue Stevenson and I wrote, and people can download that for free at coachingwhitepaper.com. But let me kind of go over these real quickly. We won't have time to go into depth, but I think that when you think about this, it's like, oh, well, of course. But when you are intentional about it, and that's the piece that we want to bring to humor, is the intentionality and the
Yes.
purposefulness. But what is your bond or rapport with the other person? Because if you have a strong relationship, what you have is trust equity. You
Yes.
have that trust with the other person. So even if you say something that they're like, whoa, dude, that was not funny, they're going to forgive you and you can
Mhm.
move on, or it will take less time than it might with another person. What is your environment or your context? Because what goes over when you're at happy hour with pals probably isn't going to go over during a coaching session.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Authenticity. Some people are like, oh, I want to be humorous, so they start trying to be somebody who they're not.
Mm. Yeah.
Safety is a big one. um, Not just physical safety from pranks, but psychological safety. Is there going to be something that you might tease about, or do something that is going to make them feel unsafe in that situation? That is something to be avoided. uh, Timing or distance. And what I mean by that is whether it's physical distance, temporal distance, cognitive distance. All of this creates emotional distance. And when we find something funny, it's because it's benign. We know it's not going to hurt us.
Yeah.
But sometimes there has to be a little distance. I don't know, Gary, have you ever had a situation where you thought, oh my God, I'm never going to live this down, and a day or two later or a week later, you're telling it to somebody and you're laughing hysterically? But
Yes.
that's because that distance made it safe. And then the last two are ones that people want as the starting point, which is content and delivery, which is where you would want to start if you were an entertainer. But if you are somebody who is that your work involves influence and well-being, those come later. It's about nourishing and developing your sense of humor so that you do wire your brain, so that you do see those openings and opportunities. I found this out when years ago I was coaching a high ticket salesman from Australia, and he said, I want to be spontaneously funny. And he sent me his videos and things like that. And I looked and it was like the audience was laughing at him. They were even throwing him laugh lines that he could use later. He literally didn't see it or hear it because his brain wasn't wired. And
Right.
that was when I kind of flipped my model around to help people start nourishing their sense of humor, because I could write him laugh lines all day long.
Yeah.
But if he doesn't know when and where to use them, it's useless. Does that
Yeah.
make sense?
Absolutely, it does make sense, and I like to watch a lot of comedy. Talking about the entertainment factor, and I'm just so fascinated by the different types of styles of delivery, material, content, and sometimes intent of the comedian. In terms of there's different styles and such, but one of them that I really do appreciate is the comedian that would explain what they're going to do. So this is what I'm going to do. My job tonight is to do this thing. It's to make you laugh and to make you think. Ideally, to make you do both at the same time, and then they'll use that hook or that initial foundational line to then go on, and then typically they say something that's unfunny, and then they'll come back and say, and that's not very funny, but they're taking the audience on that journey,
Yeah.
and such, and there's different types. I do love the one-liners and the point where you're like, you need to stop, my jaws are actually
Yeah.
aching here. But
Yeah.
there's such psychology to it. Back in the day, I was a very passive consumer where I laughed and then I walked away. More so now, from a leadership perspective, from a coaching perspective, from a human experience and interaction perspective, I'm so fascinated by how they do it, and what type and style they have for themselves of delivery, and how much they're going to explain, how much they're going to leave to the audience, how comfortable they are or are not with silence in and of a moment. Very much a coaching foundational trait there. And then what type of, essentially, Karyn, transformation that
Yeah.
they're having, the audience that is, and through this experience, and then the ability for the artist to be able to build upon something, take it down a wee avenue that was open to them from banter from the crowd, for example, or something that got more of a laugh or less of a laugh than they originally anticipated and intended. And it's very, very scientific. And I'm not an academic in terms of being able to study the art of and science of laughter and comedianship or anything like that, but it's an absolute education,
Yeah.
because I'm looking for the education now.
Yes. Yes. Now you've become a student of humor,
Yes.
and that's an amazing and amusing lifelong journey. It is.
Yeah,
It
it
is
truly
incredible.
is.
And when you reach that level and you start looking like, for instance, when I am coaching people on presentation skills, one of the techniques that I use has to do with mind mapping and really looking at where is the content, where is the engagement, where is the humor or storytelling.
Yeah.
And if I color code, and in my mind maps I can look at a glance, and if I see an area without color, I know, okay, I want to engineer something in there that's going to give people a brain break, and that's going to be a story, or it's going to be a laugh, or it's going to hopefully be both, or maybe it's an exercise. But the people who take the time to learn this,
Mhm.
because sometimes you're just going to have a lucky day and it's just going to pop and it's going to work, and yay. But I am all about humor by choice, not just chance. And
Yeah.
so when you become that student, you start learning the timing and the techniques and how to get that other person engaged, and how not to offend that other person, and how to deal with things like conflict and what's important in the storytelling. And I feel like I've just scratched the surface, and I've been doing this for 35 years. So I know there's so much more that I'm looking forward to learning.
Yeah, and it's such a valuable lesson. And I say this to the students that I have in any of the classrooms that I have, is you have access to so much more information than you think you do. It's
Yeah.
just your intention to know and understand and appreciate that, your ability and your drive towards actually looking for what that is. And
Yeah.
then what are you going to do with that information once you get it? Some of it might be throwaway, some of it might be, I don't think I need that for right now, and some of it will be actionable. And
Yeah.
then what action are you actually literally going to take as a
Yeah.
result of that? I'm going to do more of that. I'm going to do less of that. I'm going to actually try and find out the inspiration behind why they did what they did. And then it takes this. You talked about barriers earlier, and distance and such like that, and it removes a lot of that, So the ability to say, Karyn, when you were up on stage, I was so ingrained and engrossed in everything that you were doing, and then you did that one thing, and it brought me. I thought I was concentrating, and then I just elevated my concentration. Can you tell me a bit more about that? Your questions get better
Yes.
because you're paying that type and style of attention too. And when you can do it in a relatively safe environment of of humor, of delivery with an intent to serve and such, it just gives everyone a better experience, don't you think?
I do. I do. And I think learning the skills of coaching has actually helped improve my humor skills, because as a speaker, I love speaking, I love entertaining, but that was very much the mindset of I'm delivering to this audience. I'm delivering to it's changed my speaking as well,
Yeah.
because now it's about listening to understand
Yes.
and really making the other person feel seen, heard, valued, and understood.
Yeah.
And I want to do that with my humor. I want to do that with my presentations. I want to do that with my coaching,
Yeah.
and taking it to that level, to use humor to make somebody feel heard and understood. That's crazy good. That's
Yeah.
just crazy good.
Yeah, what a gift. I was actually just thinking there. I did a talk. I used to speak at conferences quite a lot, and I don't so much now. I really would like to try and get back into that. But the challenge I had was essentially it's a one and done. So it wasn't a speaker circuit or anything where I have my 3 or 4 or 5 themes or topics and I can adjust them slightly, but the core of each of the talks. Because then what I really didn't have, Karen, was the opportunity to say that really worked. That didn't work quite as well, and I thought that was really, the absolute, the Hail Mary at the end that was going to have everyone, as a standing ovation or something like that. And so I wouldn't have that. And one of the talks I did many years ago, the feedback I got on it was so it's from someone who knows me, I guess, and it was a typical Gary Gillan talk. And we went on this wonderful roller coaster of emotion and fun and laughter and poignancy and such like that. I'm not saying this verbatim. And then at the end of it, I realized that my life is no better than it was before he started. Again, I think I'm like, someone took the time, and this is back in the day when people were physically
Right.
writing,
Wow.
you
Yeah.
know, and I thought someone's taken the time to do that. And so I was grateful for the feedback and certainly the positive things in the beginning. That is supposed to be a journey, but the point was they were supposed to learn the lesson.
Mm.
And that's why they picked it, or maybe they picked it because it was me or there was no other things available at that particular time. But so then if I was to take that again, and I did take that lesson, so it
Yeah.
wasn't wasted at all. And the ability to be able to say, I need to make sure that I hammer home at some point the reason that this story is important, or the reason that you think that part is funny, is because it builds on from the previous despair type situation and it gets me to more of an even keel, or whatever the story looks like. But
Yeah.
there was the I think in the almost in the edutainment, the actual ed part, the education part, had been lost just by literally reading the words. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
And maybe afterwards, I could speak to the person, and I didn't get an opportunity to do this, and they would say, I thought it was just a laugh. I just thought, you asked me to write something down. I thought I would write something down. I had a great time in the session. I would love to come back and see you again. But literally, I don't know. Or they might say it was a terrible waste of my time or something. But it
Yeah.
was one of those things where I did get the lesson. I would love to have built on that and,
Yeah.
and just been a bit more intentional, a bit more purposeful to make sure that everyone got it.
That's powerful. That's really powerful. And that in a way helps answer the question I've been asked many times. What's the difference between a comedian and a humorist? And with a comedian, it's entertainment.
Yeah,
With a humorist, it's humor that influences.
right.
And even when you take them on that roller coaster, if there wasn't influence, persuasion, education, motivation to change,
Yeah,
that kind of thing, it's still wonderful, and it's entertainment.
yeah,
And, for the people who want that next piece, then we want to weave in that influence part. And
yeah.
so that's so insightful.
Yeah, it's very fun to read, and funny as well, very articulately put. So, in terms of, this is the Best You podcast, as you know, Karen, and what I like to do is take the opportunity to speak to every single guest and ask them what's one regular practice that Karen employs to give yourself the best opportunity to be the best version of yourself each and every day.
I have rituals, and I think, the brain loves consistency, but in my effort to improve myself and serve others, I started a practice where every morning I have several rituals where I um, maybe do a little bit of inspirational reading or something. And then I spend 15 to 20 minutes looking for humor. And then another 10 minutes or so sharing that humor.
Yeah.
And at first, I did this for a friend who struggles with depression. And
Yeah.
I was thinking, oh, what a great friend I am to send her something because I'll make her feel better. What I realized, though, was how much it was reframing my day and getting my day off to a positive start and rewiring my brain to see these opportunities. And then also serving others through connection, even just sending a funny meme or a funny quote or something. That person, what are they thinking? Oh, you were thinking of me. And if
Exactly.
it's something that I have a friend who she loves cats. And so when I have a cat meme, I'm sending it to her. She is feels seen, heard, understood. I don't send that to my guy who everything is dogs, 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 dogs.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
have different ones, but for each person, I'm stylizing it, customizing it for them. But I'm also giving myself a gift, and I do that in the morning, and then we always end the evening on something fun or uplifting. We watch some sitcom, 22 minutes, whether it's Modern Family or Big Bang or something, because we want to end our day on an uplifting note. We want to lower those stress hormones.
Yeah.
We want to be in a positive mindset. And sandwiching our day like that, it sounds maybe a little trivial to some, but I have to tell you, it has helped me weather some tremendous storms in my life.
Oh, yeah. And the compounding benefits
Yeah.
from that, of being consistent with that, it becomes part of your habit. And as you say, the habit is to serve others and yourself at the same time. That's really, really powerful. I'll absolutely love it. Karen, where can people find out more about you?
I am wildly identifiable, as Mike Birbiglia would say. Um, you can go to the website, KarynBuxman.com. I love connecting with people on social, particularly you and I think on LinkedIn, we
Yeah.
have met back and forth. And if you would like to learn more about the missing piece, which is, I have to say, if she says humbly, it's an amazing and amusing opportunity. Download the coaching white paper if you don't have it already, coachingwhitepaper.com, and uh, learn more about this and be like Gary, become a student of humor. You'll really be happy you did.
Definitely. Absolutely. I knew this was going to be a fabulous conversation, Karen. It's been so enlightening. We didn't even get to scratch the surface of a lot of the things that you're doing, but hopefully this has been enough to whet the appetite of the audience to engage a bit more. And I'll get the links to those on the show notes. Thank you very, very much for joining me today, Karen. I really appreciate it.
It's been a pleasure. I look forward to more conversations.
Me too. Hello again. Thanks again for tuning in to this episode, and I do hope that you found it valuable and gained some insights. I do have an ask for you. If you enjoyed this podcast, I would absolutely love it if you would connect with me on my socials, and that's at LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. Just search for my name and do whatever it is you need to do there to follow me and stay updated with all the latest content, tips, and discussions. And for any more resources that you're looking for, feel free to visit my website, garygillen.com. And while you're there, you can book a free, no obligation 30-minute coaching call directly with me through the site. Whether you're looking to enhance your performance or tackle a new challenge, I'm absolutely here to help you succeed, and I would absolutely love to hear from you. Thanks very much again, and until next time, keep pushing towards your goals and getting better each and every day, my friend.